Okay, so welcome to our Microsoft Excel tutorial. This is the tutorial for Microsoft Excel in using spreadsheet software in descriptive statistics. So first, let's begin by identifying the different parts of the cells or the terminologies that we're going to be using. So let's start with the very simple rows. So each individual number here is considered a row, and that would be going from left to right. And then you have the columns, which are from top to bottom. So each of these are considered columns. And then the intersections of the rows and the columns would be referred to as cells. Okay, so for the purpose of our discussion, we're going to be referring to rows, columns, and cells. Okay, so again, this is a tutorial for using spreadsheet software as a tool for descriptive statistics. So we're going to be computing for the different descriptive statistics that you can see here, starting with the simplest: mean, median, mode, variance, standard deviation, range, skewness, and kurtosis. So we're going to be using this sample data. So this is just a random data set that I came up with. So this is just a random set of numbers that we're going to be using for our formulas. Okay, so let's start our descriptive statistics, or let's start our formulas by first practicing how Microsoft Excel or how any other spreadsheet software may use or may be prompted to use formulas. Okay, so in Microsoft Excel as well as in Google Sheets, I'm not so sure about WPS Office, but for Microsoft Excel and other related spreadsheet software, we start with the equal sign. So when you type in the equal sign, you're prompting Excel that you are going to type in a formula. And so each click you do, it's going to give you the coordinates of the certain cell that you've referenced. So in this case, for example, I want to reference A2. So I'm just going to click A2 or the cell, and then it's going to give me, of course, it's going to give me the different, or it's going to reference A2, and it's going to take the value of A2, which is in this case 21. So let's say I wanted to add another number here. I could just simply add or prompt it with a plus sign and then click on another coordinate. Okay, so A3, A4, A5, A6. Doesn't matter where in the spreadsheet we're going to reference, as long as it is a valid reference. So you might find an error later on, or when you're using the software. It's the we call it the reference. So this error, if it presents itself, means that you have an invalid reference in your formula, and so be very careful of what cell you use as reference. So in this case, I'm going to add, let's say, A2 and A3. So all I have to do now is type in or press the enter key, and then I'm going to have the sum of A2 and A3. Okay. Alternatively, I could type in again an equal sign and simply place the values I want. So 21 plus 19, and then I get the same 40. Okay, so the references we do, we can also type in A2 plus A3, and we would get the same results. So there are different ways for you to type in the formulas we use for Excel, but I would simply suggest that if you're going to type in manually, so type in equal sign, you just select the cell for reference. Okay. So this one, the difference is it allows us a certain level of flexibility. Like for instance, you want to change A3 into another value. Let's say, let's make it 17. The formula is going to update. Okay. So unlike when you type the values in manually, it's not going to update because the values are hard coded into our prompt. Unlike when you have reference cells, sorry. So when you have reference cells, it's not going to change, or it's going to change depending on if you update the cells that you've used. Okay, so in this case, it updated to 38 because we changed A3 into 17. Okay, so again, it has its advantages and disadvantages. You know, if you hard code the values, it's going to stay as is. If you reference the cells, it's going to update as you update the reference cells. Okay, so that aside, let's try to compute for the mean. And by the way, these formulas, they can scale indefinitely, meaning that you could add as much numbers as you want, and it's going to compute regardless of how long your formula is and how many operations you want to perform. But it's also going to follow the PEMDAS rule. Okay, so it's going to prioritize the parentheses, exponents, multiplication, divisions, additions, and subtractions. So be careful of how you code your formulas. Okay, so let's try to compute for the mean. Again, the first thing that we have to do is code in or prompt Excel with an equal sign and then reference our cells. But first, remember that the formula for mean is the summation of all of the values divided by its total count. So we first have to make sure that we follow the rules of PEMDAS. So we type in an open parenthesis, you click, and then you click your first reference, second, third, fourth, and then fifth. You close the parenthesis and then divide everything by the number of cells or the number of observations we have, which is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we simply press enter. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way is that, again, you can hard code our values. So type in an equal sign, you go an open parenthesis, 21 plus 17 plus 28 plus 18 plus 24. You close the parenthesis and then divide it by 5, which again is the number of observations. Simply press enter and you get 21.6. And again, if one of these values update, so let's say we return A3 back to 19, it's also going to update your mean. Okay, so it's as simple as that. It's just an equal sign plus using the formulas. And you notice if I simply add or if I simply indicate the operations here or the different terms, so let's say 21 plus 19 and plus 28 plus 18 plus 24, it's not going to work. So I have to first place an equal sign at the beginning. Okay, and then possibly let's try if we divide this by 5. You see it's going to output a different value because again, Microsoft Excel uses the PEMDAS, so we need to indicate the open and close parenthesis, and therefore we have our hard-coded mean. Okay, so next, let's explore a very nice feature of Excel. I'm going to delete this, which allows us to compute the measures that we're going to compute for in a simpler and faster fashion. Okay, so Microsoft Excel has actually coded formulas behind the scenes. So for instance, we want to compute for the mean, we can simply type in equal sign and then mean, or sorry, in this case, we use average, and then open the parenthesis or open parenthesis, and then we have to select the data range that we're going to be using. Now, in this case, we don't want to include our header because our header is not a numerical value and therefore it's not going to compute. And you see, it's asking you, you have your formula average here, and then it's asking you for the first number, second number, third number, and so on and so forth, separated by commas. So let's try A2. And then once I type in a comma, it's going to allow me to select another number, and then another, and then another, and then another. So once I close and then press enter, it's going to give me the same formula or the same value for mean. Okay, so it's much simpler, and then we can also make it a lot simpler by simply dragging and selecting our data set. So in this case, I'm going to type in the equal sign again, type in average, then you have your parentheses. All I have to do is it's asking me for number one, number two, and number three, and so on and so forth. This time I can just simply select the whole data set. So this indicates that what I'm selecting is cell A2 to cell A6. Okay, so I can then add the close parenthesis and then type enter or press enter, and then it's going to give me the same value. Now, the good thing about this is that it auto updates as well every time you change any of the values. So, for example, you do again change A3 to 17, it's going to give you an updated mean. So, it's a lot simpler for us to monitor our average, and it allows us also to monitor if there are changes that happened in our formulas. Okay. So I could also use that for the different values that we're going to use. So let's say for median, I just type in equal sign median, and then again, I just select my data range and then press enter. For mode, I can just simply add or type in mode. Now it's going to make you select your mode. It could be either be multimodal or single mode. In this case, we're going to go with single. So SNGL, and then again your parenthesis, select your data range, and then close. You have your completed formula. You press enter, then you have an answer of NA. So you could check the errors here, and then if it says, I'm not sure if you can read it, it's quite small. No, a value is not available to the formula or function. So that means that the value cannot be computed because it's not available. So in this case, for instance, I want that to appear. So I'm going to change one of the observations. Let's say I change 83 again into 18. Now I have a mode because I have two observations of 18, and then the rest are 21, 28, and 24. Okay. As you can see also, your mean updates and your median does not. And we're going to be talking more about this in the future, but median is very resistant to changes in your dataset because it is the central value. It bisects the dataset. So it does not necessarily, it's not affected by values, but rather the order of your dataset. Okay. So that's it for our measures of center. You have mean, median, and mode. Let's have the variance now. So this one is quite special because it offers you two different formulas for variance. So you have variance for the population and the variance for the sample. So for the purpose of our study, we're always going to be using the variance for the sample or the sample variance. So you simply type in equals var dot s, and then same process. You simply select the data range and then close, and you have your variance. For standard deviation, that would be stdev.s. Again, you have two options. You have .p for population and .s for standard deviation or sample standard deviation. So in this case, we're going to use stdev.s, and then select your data range, close, and then press enter. You have your standard deviation. Unfortunately, for range, we don't have, or Excel does not have a formula for range. So as you can see, you don't have a formula for range. So you have binomial distance or by the binomial range. But this one, for this one, we're simply going to use a maximum of the data set and then subtract the minimum in the data set. Okay, so simply press enter, you get your range, and you get a range of 10. Okay, so unfortunately, we don't have a native formula for range, so what we do is maximum minus minimum. Okay, next we have skewness. we have equal sign skew. Again, you have returns the skewness of a distribution, and then you have also skew.p. This one is again is based on the population. So in this case, we're only going to use skew, and then again select the data range, then press enter. You have your skewness, and then finally you have your kurtosis. This one is equal sign kurt, and then select your sample or data set, and then close, and then you have your kurtosis. Okay, so it's as simple as that, simple as typing and memorizing a few formulas. If you're using Office 365, it's very helpful that you have the reference formula. So when you type equal sign and when you start typing, it's going to give you the suggestion. So for example, you want sum. Sum is the summation of all the data set. You can have simply select again the data set and you have your sum. Okay, so very helpful that you are given suggestions for the formulas that you can be using. I think if I remember correctly, in older versions of Excel, you don't have these suggestions, but these will still work in the older versions of Excel. So there might be some variation in how it's encoded, but overall, Microsoft Excel has long been a great statistical tool for descriptive statistics. It allows us easier access to our descriptives, and therefore, it's a very helpful tool for statistics. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Now, Microsoft Excel, if I'm not mistaken, again, I think versions 2010 and above would have what we call the data analysis toolpak. So if I'll go to my data tab up here, I go on to data analysis. Okay, so now take note that this is not always enabled, or this is not automatically enabled in your Microsoft Excel. So you're going to have to enable this, and let me show you how. Okay, so for that to be enabled, you go to File, you go to Options, and then you go to Add-ins. So in here, you can simply click on. It's already active in mine because I've been using it a lot. It's going to be in your inactive application add-ins. If you're just going to add in, just take it. You just click on Analysis Toolpak. Make sure it's not the one with the dash VBA. So don't select this. Select the Analysis Toolpak, and then you simply click Go below. Don't click OK yet. Click Go, and then make sure that your Analysis Toolpak is checked. Again, by default, it's not going to be checked. So make sure it's checked or ticked, and then click OK. And if you accomplish that step by step, you're going to have your data analysis here for Microsoft Excel. Now for MacBook, I'm not sure, or I don't think I remember exactly how to do it, but it's not going to be in the settings. It's not going to be in the add-ins. It's going to be in your data tab. So you're going to have to activate it in a different manner than you would with Windows 11, Windows 10, or Windows XP. Okay. So once you have this enabled, so let me just delete this. So once you have this enabled data analysis, you could just simply go with your analysis toolpak, go to your data tab, data analysis, and then look for descriptive statistics. Okay. And then click OK. And then it's going to ask you for an input range. So this is simply asking you where your data is. So you can click the arrow above or make sure that your cursor is ticking. Select your data. In this case, you can also include your header. So let's say I'm going to include my header. And then it's going to tell you, or it's going to ask you if it's grouped by rows or columns. In this case, it's grouped by columns. So I'm going to go with columns. And then it's going to ask you if there are labels in the first row. In this case, we do have a label that is your sample. So I'm going to click on labels in the first row. Next, it's going to give you output options. So you can output in the same worksheet. So we can output here in the same worksheet. You can create a new worksheet ply, meaning you're going to add a worksheet here. And then you could also open a new workbook. Okay, so that depends on where you want it. But for this case, we're just going to select output range. And then you click on summary statistics, and then you select where you want your output to appear. So in this case, I want it on E1. Then once you have a screen that looks like this or a dialog box that looks like this, you can simply press OK. And then you have all your descriptive statistics here. Okay, again, mean, standard error, median, mode, standard deviation, sample variance, kurtosis, skewness, range, minimum, maximum, sum, and count. Okay, so it's as simple as that. It's easier to use Microsoft Excel or a spreadsheet software. Unfortunately, this data analysis is not available in Google Sheets. It's only available for Microsoft Excel. It may also be available in some statistical software like R, Python, SPSS, PSPP. So there are plenty of other statistical software that can compute your descriptive statistics with just a few clicks, but Excel by far is the most accessible, I would say. Okay, so later on we'll talk more about the different settings or the different options we have in your data analysis toolpak. But for now, I hope you've learned how to use Microsoft Excel in your descriptive statistics, and I hope this could help you um, streamline your computations for descriptive statistics. All right, so that's all. Thank you for listening, and hopefully, you've learned something new. So, thanks.